Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
PTSD among public health workers and healthcare workers, that is the silent, but probably the biggest long-term effect of this thing.
Tonight, we look back on an anniversary that most would like to forget, as it's been 2 years since the COVID-19 virus first hit Yellowstone County. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. I'm Russ Riesinger. Since the pandemic began, Yellowstone County has seen nearly 43,000 total cases. Well, Montana as a whole has confirmed just under 272,000 cases. It's a pandemic that has affected virtually every one of us in one way or another, with changes to health services, schools, businesses, and sports. Tonight, Alina Howder catches up with Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton, who has taken the lead from day one on trying to slow the spread.
It's been 2 years since the first case of COVID-19 was reported in Yellowstone County. Health Officer John Felton reflects back on this life-changing global pandemic with what was learned and his key takeaways.
The first case of COVID-19 was reported on March 13th of 2020.
It went from basically nothing to full onslaught over that weekend.
In the last 2 years, 545 Yellowstone County residents have lost their lives to the coronavirus. Without a structure like the Unified Health Command in place, it could have been far worse.
Don't wait for something to happen before you put those structures in place, even if you're just practicing.
Guidances had to be constantly updated as new variants made their way around the county.
The ability to be nimble and sort of turn on a dime is really critical.
And health officials had no idea the pandemic would last this long.
We underestimated really how long this was going to take. You really have to view this as the marathon, not the sprint, as the old saying goes.
These last 2 years have taken its toll on healthcare and public health workers.
PTSD among public health workers and healthcare workers, that is the silent, but probably the biggest long-term effect of this thing. We, speaking collectively, we lost some good people through this.
Part of that has to do with the politicization of the pandemic, something that John calls unprecedented.
The sense that you had to take a position, and those positions became really deeply entrenched. It was sort of like cat grizz on steroids.
And these last 2 years have been tumultuous for John himself. He's been subjected to multiple threats, something he couldn't have endured without the help of his family and community.
I can't imagine trying to do it alone, or organization and family and friends are really critical when you're going through that.
As for the end of the pandemic, though cases and hospitalization numbers have plummeted, there's no telling when it'll be over.
It's over when society decides it's over. The virus is not going to go away. We're going to continue to have cases. We're going to continue to have, in the fall, it's likely to go up again.
John hopes that the community can take it one day at a time without the hostility we've seen in the past 2 years.
I think we lost a lot of civility. I'd just like to see a little more civility and kindness in the world when these things happen.
In Billings, Alina Howder, MTN News.
But there definitely seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel right now, as Yellowstone County reported only 5 new cases today, and no Montana county saw more than 18 new cases. The state as a whole confirmed 105 new cases, one of its lowest totals since July of last year. 47 patients remain in state hospitals at this hour, but that was at more than 200 just 8 weeks ago. Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh joining us now. And if you're up early tomorrow morning, really early, you might get a special sight in the skies. Huh?
That's right, yeah. Just before sunrise, we've had several planets that have been lining up pretty well. Venus is the one that's really going to stand out in the southeast sky. So you might look for that first and then kind of get a point of view so you can take a look around Mars and down towards Saturn. This could be just above the horizon, really stand out, especially now that we're looking at the time of the season when Venus is really at its brightest. But we got a clear sky to go along with that as well, so it makes it easier to pick about in the sky. We'll take a look at the complete forecast details coming up in a few minutes.
The Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates this week in an effort to control surging inflation rates. The last rate hike was in 2018, and now economists say to expect a quarter-point increase. Of course, this all comes as inflation reaches a 40-year high, something that's impacting nearly every Montana sector, especially small and local businesses. MTN's Hannah Hislop visits some Missoula businesses to see just how much.
Missoula small businesses like here at Great Harvest are the flavor of the community, but inflation is stressing their bottom line. At Missoula's Great Harvest Bread Co., it starts with a grain of wheat. And through the heat of this massive oven, it becomes a loaf. But nowadays, raising dough means raising prices. Charlie Shield, Great Harvest Bread Co. owner, says his wheat prices are up.
Our wheat prices just went up 10%. And, you know, over the past year, all our prices have gone up pretty substantially.
They aren't the only ones feeling the effect of inflation. Hannah Evans, wholesale manager at Bernice's Bakery, says some of the wholesale companies they purchase from have been raising prices for months now.
The company that we get them from has actually increased 3 times over the past 6 months.
Bernice's Bakery hasn't raised their prices on baked goods in over 2 years, but in order to not crunch on numbers, they are in the process of adjusting prices.
And we are in the process of starting to do that again because of all of these increases on us.
Great Harvest raised their prices about 15% last fall to meet demands, equating to a 10 to 20 cent increase on baked goods. And Bernice's says they are looking at a 25 to 50 cent increase. Both stores say they don't want to raise prices, but they are left with no other choice.
Now things are continuing to get more expensive, and so I'm hoping not to have to raise prices again. But, you know, there's only so much of that we can eat as a business.
Both businesses tell me that inflation is not the only stressor right now. Worker and supply shortages are still going to be a problem. In Missoula, Hannah Hisloff, MTN News.
Well, right now, everyone seems to be talking about gas prices and ways to save at the pump. Have you heard about hypermiling? Does it really work? Tonight, consumer reporter John Matarese puts it to the test.
Bosco Engels hops into his Prius to show his secrets for getting 50, 60, or more miles per gallon.
And the best thing on that is just to not accelerate as fast and to brake or anticipate braking.
Bosco is a hypermiler who saves money on gas by treating the gas pedal like a carton of eggs and doing
Smooth but consistent acceleration.
His biggest tips: no jackrabbit starts, anticipate red lights and stop signs, and turn your car's stop-start feature back on if it has one. Doing that can boost mileage.
It really depends on the vehicle. I would estimate 10%.
His other secret to great mileage: drive the speed limit.
Every 5 miles an hour above 70, you're going to get 5 to 10 miles an hour less gas mileage.
Now you might be saying, I don't know if I can drive like that. Is there some gadget or gizmo I can put under the hood or perhaps plug into my car's dashboard that will improve its mileage?
Almost any fuel-saving gadget you're going to buy is nothing. I mean, they're garbage.
Jason Torchinsky has studied fuel-saving devices for a decade as tech writer for Jalopnik and the Autopian. He says today's cars are so high-tech that a fuel line magnet or a blue light bulb will not boost your mileage.
There's no reason to believe these will do anything for you whatsoever.
The FTC has shut down dozens of fuel savers over the years. Jason says some oil additives or thinner motor oil might help a tiny bit.
Maybe you would get an infinitesimal advantage of efficiency.
But he says thinner oil can also harm some engines. So your best bet, slow down like Bosco, and that'll make the biggest difference when it's $4 at the pump, so you don't waste your money. I'm John Matarese.
For the first time since 1996, the Montana State Bobcats are going dancing. And on top of that, the Lady Bobcats are celebrating their 3rd trip to the NCAA tournament. The men tip off on Friday against Texas Tech, while the women face Stanford on Saturday. Add it all up, it'll most likely be a basketball-filled weekend around the state, especially in Bozeman. MTN's Edgar Cedillo takes a look at how restaurants and bars are getting ready.
First time in history, both the men's and the women's basketball teams have made it to the NCAA tournament at the same time. And as the teams get ready to dance, businesses in Bozeman are getting ready for the madness.
Yeah, it's been an exciting year for Bobcat fans. It's really been the year of the Bobcat.
Coming off a historic win, the men's and women's basketball teams are headed to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1996 and 2017.
Yeah, totally awesome between all the success the school's having over there.
Bozeman once again is getting to rally behind their Bobcats.
People in Bozeman and the surrounding area are awfully excited about it, and they've definitely been in getting new gear.
Bars and stores are staffing up and filling racks with Bobcat apparel.
Just make sure we're staffed and understand the excitement behind it, and that people are going to be in, and you know, just be ready for that, because you know, anytime you have success, you know, in the area, it's a real boost to the economy and a real boost for business.
Those downtown not only getting ready for March Madness, but St. Patrick's Day celebrations.
You know, it's already going into a crazy weekend with St. Patrick's Day and all of that being right on March Madness this year.
Expecting to fill up just like they did for football playoffs.
And I'd expect most of the community down here to be able to watch that game.
The product keeps coming in for fans ready to don their gear.
You know, we get new product in every day, and we just got the men's, the Big Sky shirts in, and we have the men's and women's tournament championship shirts coming in, and then March Madness shirts coming in by the end of this week as well.
The men's basketball team takes on Texas Tech Friday, and the women will face defending champions Stanford Friday as well. Of course, stay with MTN Sports for the latest. In Bozeman, Edgar Cedillo, MTN News.
This Thursday, March Madness takes over right here on Q2 with the first game between Michigan and Colorado State, tipping off at 10:15 a.m. And before our evening slate of games starts, we will be on with your local news at an earlier time of 4 o'clock. You can still catch us at our regular 5:30 time slot on the KTVQ streaming app for Roku and other devices. But again, we'll be over the air starting at 4 o'clock. Well, still ahead on the MTN 530 news here on Q2, vaping is on the rise, so much so that some are calling it an epidemic. We'll learn more about its health effects next. And in sports, football season is upon us. Well, kind of. The Rocky football team kicking off spring camp with championship expectations this year. We'll hear from the Battling Bears coming up in just a bit.
The MTN 530 news continues right after this. From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 530 news.
For years, vaping has been viewed as a safer alternative to smoking cigarettes. That's not exactly the case. In tonight's Your Health Matters, MTN's Cade Mentor spoke with experts to learn the harmful effects vaping has on teenagers.
According to the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services, 28% of middle school students report having tried e-cigarettes, while 16% currently use them. Those numbers were from 2019, and experts say they've only increased since then.
This is a very concerning issue. It is a youth vaping epidemic. You know, we've seen our number of youth increase dramatically. You know, we hear a lot of issues with vaping in the schools and in getting into the younger grades. So right now we're trying to reach out to even 5th and 6th graders to get ahead of this. It is a huge issue. It is probably the #1 substance that youth are concerned about.
Despite the increasing amount of middle schoolers reported to use e-cigarettes, there's been a decrease in the amount of high schoolers engaging in vaping, from 30% to 26% between 2019 and 2021. Concern levels, however, are still high.
That's still a huge percentage of our youth that are using e-cigarettes. It's 1 in 4 high school students that are currently using these products. It's still the most commonly used tobacco product amongst our youth.
Montana high school students use e-cigarettes at a rate 5 times more than Montana adults. And as more younger kids in middle school are being exposed, both peer and media influence play a major role. But one area in particular that drives addiction are the amount of flavors that total over 15,000.
We have heard directly from Montana teens that the reason they use these e-cigarettes is because they're curious about all the different flavors and they want to try those flavors out.
Organizations are engaging in ways to address the issue to local communities, and they say education is the first step, and for parents, warning your kids ahead of time. In Great Falls, Cade Mentor, MTN News.
Coming up next, a few showers are popping up on the radar. It has the latest on the weather coming up.